because of experiences that I've had in the past, I've kind of been driven to participate in this way, right? Like I want to know. I've had experiences, right, and some kind of in your face experiences, but even more so, that's made me want to know the truth, right? Which I have come to some kind of reconciliation that I'm probably never going to fully understand everything. Maybe not until I have the complete transition to the next realm kind of thing, because I did have something akin to an NDE, and there are like these kind of revelation themes. Not saying that it's actual truth, actual reality, but at least the perception of such, right? So I have, I got into all of this stuff very early on because I was having high strangeness experiences, which I think are, just like with what happened to us with the dream, and you reached out and all. I mean, that happened naturally. It was organic.
To advertise on Through a Glass Darkly, email throughaglassdarkly@gmail.com.
In a sense where there was no coordination between us that occurred. It happened in of itself in some sense, whether again, like the causation of whether it was precognitive on my end or intentional on your end, or some kind of in between collective unconscious space that facilitated that.
Or there was a third party entity involved, right? Yeah. We don't know that either. Like,
correct.
We can speculate all we want, but random chance, I suppose, maybe like a fifth of the percentage that, I don't know. I think is probably a probability that could have happened by random chance, but I think it's so infinitesimal. I think it's more likely that we get eaten by a shark in our living rooms,
right? Seriously.
At the same time than that happened, right?
Yeah.
Like it's one of those things. Like, is it probable that could happen? Sure. Now, like Stephen Greenstreet, as an example, might say, "Oh, you're both just making this up." Okay, like there's no way for me to prove that James isn't making this up. I don't think he's making it up because of his reaction, the way it happened. But sure, that's the best argument they have. But these things happen so often to me that I didn't even hesitate to not believe you. Like, it's just like, that's pretty much.
And again, I was really like torn. I was like, should I even tell this guy? Because he's going to think I'm like just making this up or something. Like, it doesn't do me any favor sharing this story at all.
But I think that's the problem with this field, is the stigma, right? I think if more people shared these stories, more people would realize how commonplace that they are.
Right. And again, like I said, I was actually like, I'm a little embarrassed to talk about it publicly because it's a private dream and it was a private thing and there's nothing I can prove about it. So it doesn't help me to talk about it other than I know it happened.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. It's just a fact. You had a dream about you being on this show, and I reached out to you later that day. Those are facts.
Yeah. You
can choose to interpret them any way you want. We don't admittedly know why it happened the way it happened, but it did. Okay, well, let's talk about you. I keep talking. I'm already going to get comments like, "Let the guest talk. You're talking too much." Okay, so when's the first time that you had any sort of experience?
Yeah. So the first time that I recall that I had an experience, the first one actually was with entities, and that, I mean, I must have been 5 or 6, and it was kind of, I mean, not kind of, very scary at the time because
where was this? Was this also in kind of Hudson Valley area?
Yeah, this is right. So I mean, I didn't even get to that. I live in New York. I live actually in the Hudson Valley area. So I was born during the Hudson Valley wave, UFO wave in the 80s. And so that, there's not just the UFO activity around here, but there's a whole like history of high strangeness. People have said like the Hudson Valley is like a vortex area kind of thing where a lot of anomalies occur. But I think this kind of stuff can happen anywhere. But that just in my own story, that's I actually live in where the Hudson Valley UFO wave took place, like square inch for square inch. Like there were sightings literally down the street from where I lived into miles away. I mean, the Hudson Valley UFO wave spanned many miles from New York and Connecticut, from just outside of Manhattan to all the way up above where I live in Westchester, New York. So, but this experience, it happened maybe over a half dozen times. And as far as I'm concerned, it was sporadic, that I had, like, you can consider them almost like shadow entities, but they had like a hue, they glue a little bit. But the very first thing, before I had even seen the entity, or as I heard like a voice in my head, but throughout my body. And as soon as that happened, and this is in the middle of the night, so I was sleeping and I woke up in the middle of the night and I heard almost like a whispering. And I was freaking out already. Like I was already a little nervous. Like there's nobody in the room with me that I could see. And then I heard the kind of whispering thing. And then I'm looking over and see this entity. And then the first thing I heard, like clearly, was, "He can see us." And as soon as I heard that, I began to pretty much panic. And that there was the entity, and watching it. And it was like a shadow entity, but it had a very soft glow to it. And it was moving and like collapsed into an orb, and there were two other ones there, like two other orbs. And I literally covered myself up, and I'm hearing like this whispering. Like if you ever saw the movie Knowing with Nicolas Cage, literally, I don't know who made that movie, or the producer, or what, but that kind of whispering thing that the kids are hearing, the telepathic communication from the non-human intelligence, was exactly like that. And I would just try to shut them out, and I literally pulled the blankets over me and was panicking until I would fall asleep.
Did you get a vibe from these entities, positive or negative, or was it just the voice, independent of that, just terrified?
I was so terrified that I like my natural defenses kicked in to block everything out, because even the voices, I was trying to like not hear the voices. And so the vibe I got was just, I was scared, basically. So I think that was overriding anything else, because again, there was nothing threatening about it. The voices didn't sound malevolent. Nothing seemed forceful. Nothing seemed like it was trying to harm me at all. It was just, for whatever reason, I was aware of them.
Male, female voices, indeterminate?
If I had to say, I would say male, but it wasn't like predominantly male. But yeah, more leaning towards a male voice.
Do you see eyes or just shadows?
No,
okay,
no eyes. Just the kind of figure and the soft glow to it, and then the orb. And
was the orb shadow-like too, or was it kind of color?
No, it was identical to the entity, and the soft glow it had, and it was dark, but it had a soft glow.
Any color to the glow, or just
like a whitish? It was very like light, and it was very soft. It wasn't like emitting light. It wasn't like an orb, like you see like a typical orb. It was not bright like that at all.
Okay, so this is the first time. This is around age 5.
And
6,
you said
7.
You had about, it's hard, yeah.
And you said you had about half a dozen of these encounters
over the course of several years, maybe over the course of 2 or 3 years. But within that, I had several out-of-body experiences that were spontaneous and very short, but I always remembered them. I always remember them very clearly, because I was, even then at that age, fascinated by it. And like the first one that I can recall was, I had a sleepover at a friend's house, and this is in first or second grade, and I was just falling asleep, and this is like what's really tricky about it. Like, I don't know at the point that I actually had fallen asleep, because while I'm perceiving it, the whole time it felt as if I was awake, right? So I was like, we were laying down, getting ready to go to bed. And as far as I'm concerned, like my eyes were open and I'm just looking into the ceiling, like looking up. But then all of a sudden I'm rising above myself, above my body, and then I'm looking down at myself. And it wasn't until that point where I'm like, holy shit, that's me. And then boom, like I'm back in my body. Just very non-consequential in a sense. But I mean, I was like, even then I was amazed. I'm like, what just happened? But I didn't think too much about it after that, where I was like, I mean, I was so young. I wasn't like, I'm going to go investigate this. Right.
Right.
But because of those experiences, I was always open and interested in even UFOs, psychic phenomena. And, like when I would go to my public library, they had some UFO books out because it's the Hudson Valley area. And I don't know if it was because of the time of the year, but for whatever reason, I was drawn to that section of the public library. And I remember even at a young age, this is a few years later, reading Night Siege by Philip and Brognell, but it was the last book co-authored by Dr. J. Allen Hynek, and it was all about the Hudson Valley UFO wave.